So welcome everyone to this session on AI, privacy, and regulation. About, of course, trust and safety. As you know, trust and safety is a lot of different things. Today we'll focus a lot on the content moderation side. So how do we deal with your online content? Internet is changing fast. Regulation are a big part of it. That's why we created CheckStep, a trust and safety platform, a few years ago. But the world is changing much faster, essentially because of this recent revolution around AI, on generative AI. We'll speak about it. But also it's because the world is at war. We hear every day now big division across the world, and it's visible. On internet, we see a lot of bad content, bad behavior, and we are here to discuss that. So today we are welcoming Kieran from CheckStep. Kieran, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Kieran. I have a dual role at CheckStep, which is really interesting, that I am head of public policy and I'm also a product manager. There is no separation of church and state at CheckStep. A good reason for that is that these regulations need to be built directly into the platform. So therefore, you need someone who can traverse the legal world and the tech world. No offense, but I sit between two groups of people that don't speak English. I've got lawyers on one side, and they definitely don't speak English. And then I have engineers on the other side, and they barely qualify as human a lot of the time. They think very differently. They speak very differently. So I am the bridge across the chasm of chaos and confusion that happens if you put lawyers and techies together.
Now we have Vincent from Bird.
Thank you. Well, what to say after that? That is English, with a slight French accent. So, bonjour. Hi, everyone. I'm Vincent Rezukamashi. I'm a partner at Bird, but based in London. And my practice is around privacy and data protection and AI. Most of my work is to act as a data protection officer for global organizations. So I have quite a macro view as to what are the challenges that organizations are facing today.
I'm a lawyer speaking English. My name is Adrian. I'm a partner at Entropy. We are a tech French-based lawyers in Paris. We work a lot with the online platforms to make sure they develop responsible content, infrastructure to host content online, and as well generative AI providers. So really glad to be here with you today.
Thanks a lot, Adrien. So as an opening question, I want to ask you, all of you, is internet becoming a regulated industry, similar to healthcare with FDA approval, or the financial regulation? Is internet in the same spirit? Today is changing, and you can't create a company without having a compliance officer.
Yes, I think that's a very good question. I think indeed it becomes clearly a very regulated space. I think it started a few years ago, quite astonishingly with the GDPR. It started before, but the GDPR really brought on board, especially with the extraterritorial reach of the GDPR, a lot of regulation in the space of the internet. And now we see that there are more regional regulations regulating the internet. I think what I see is that we are at a stage where there are many regulations that are regional or local. And because the internet is global, and because you're talking about the future of the internet, I think the challenge that I foresee is how we're going to be able to regulate, but at a global level, and how the internet will be able to become a regulated space, but at a global level with international agencies in charge of monitoring compliance with international regulations, because for global organizations, it's a real challenge to navigate regionally regulated internet today.
Just wanted to add that I don't think it's becoming regulated. It has always been. It's just there's a main... Yeah, you're frowning. I can see that. GDPR, actually in France, it exists for 40 years. The Digital Services Act that is being enforceable for a month, actually, you have a historical e-commerce directive that dates from 2000, sorry, and in the US as well, you have the DMCA. I mean, like, those texts are not new in their scope and in their intent. The big difference being that today there are more incentive for company and organization to develop safety by design, because there might be higher fines and sanctions, and also because the enforcement requirements are becoming a bit stricter. But again, it was not the World Wide West. I think this is a misconception, if I may. So those texts do exist for 40 years. It's just that they are becoming more coherent, and we're still waiting for the way they're going to be enforced and how also organizations can be incentivized in the way they're developing products.
Got it. And it's visible as well. The fines are now millions or billions.
So, yeah, I agree. We're definitely already in a regulated environment, but what's unclear is what kind of what that regulation is actually going to look like and what that enforcement is actually going to look like. So unlike healthcare or finance, where it's very, very clear cut, financial regulation is really easy because the currency is money. It's moving around. It's very easy to track. It's very easy to see. Online safety, we're dealing with people's opinions. And the regulations that are coming out are a bit confusing. So anecdotally, one of the projects that I worked on at Meta was a resolution that was passed down from the German competition regulator, the FCO, the Federal Cartel Office. Man, I've never wanted to work for an organization more than the Federal Cartel Office. That's so cool. But basically what they said was, you can't match Instagram account data with Facebook account data. So if somebody's got a Facebook account, they then spin up an Instagram account. Basically, all the information that we knew about that individual was copied over to better serve ads and better understand that individual. But they were using GDPR as an antitrust tool. And we're seeing a lot of that with DSA. Is it an online safety regulation or is it an antitrust regulation? GDPR is being moved from being a privacy legislation to being an antitrust piece of legislation, because they're finally beginning to understand that data is the currency. It is the oil. It's what powers these companies. And if you can use privacy legislation and you can use online safety legislation to kind of limit the power, that's the direction they want to move in. But they're not openly moving towards that enough. It's still a bit confused. That was a very long answer for a non-lawyer.
Okay, so that was the introduction, but let's go directly into the core of the matter. So AI for content moderation. Why does it matter, and how does it align with the regulatory expectation?
There are many ways to answer this question. I'm just going to say, if you're an entity or an organization and you want to use some AI providers, then you have to check how they are compliant with their AI strategy as well. So imagine you're using an AI verification tool or AI content moderation tool, then there's going to be all those pieces of regulation that we've just mentioned that you have to take into account. So for instance, regarding data protection, you may think of doing a data protection impact assessment because of the GDPR, but if you come to think about it a little bit closer, there are other pieces of legislation that might also apply, such as the temporary regulation for, so the CSAM that has some temporary derogation to the e-privacy directive that actually tells you that not only you have to do a data protection impact assessment, but maybe under certain qualification, you also have to spontaneously reach out to the data protection authority for a prior consultation. So if you want the specific reference, it's Article 31C of Directive 2021, but Regulation 2021. But then also, if you want to anticipate what's upcoming with the AI Act and all those systems that might qualify also as high-risk AI system, then you will have to do some, maybe depending on the configuration, fundamental right assessment or conformity assessment. And then, so if you want to have that kind of overall coherent approach, maybe you should craft your own algorithmic impact assessment that is some kind of common tool so that you don't have to do all those assessments all over again and having all those, that kind of conformity documentation that is so long that you don't know what to do with it. So my two takeaways would be like first to see all the kind of impact assessment that you should anticipate, and then maybe craft your own to have your own approach that does not only integrate data protection but also bias, security by design, etc.
So do we need to have AI policies? So is it mandatory today, or what is the governance that we have to have today with respect to the AI model for content moderation? So to flag, as you mentioned, CSAM, unwanted imagery, or...
I think that actually from what I see, I know very little organizations that actually have policies in place for the use of AI and for the use of AI for content moderation, but more generally for the use of AI. There is very little policies in place. There are very little procedures in place. And when I discuss with organizations that are quite big, quite global, quite sophisticated, have sophisticated processes and procedures, they're not ready. They don't have an AI committee. And that's something that is totally necessary. It's not a requirement in itself. There is no mandatory provision that obliges organization to have such provisions. But in order to comply with the regulations, you need to have these policies and procedures in place in order to ensure that when you onboard AI solutions and AI technology, you have the appropriate safeguards in place in order to spot the fact that there's an AI project, spot the fact that there's a DPA that is needed, spot the fact that there's a risk assessment that is needed. I think also the second element in terms of AI governance, I think, is also the lack of awareness and understanding of the technology amongst lawyers, but also amongst other area of businesses who don't really understand the AI technologies. And that is also something, and at the board level as well, and that is something that I think will need to change to allow the adoption of AI for content moderation, but also more broadly, generally.
Yeah, so I keep linking back to privacy for a number of reasons, and there's a reason why IAP, the International Association of Privacy Professionals, have jumped on the AI governance bandwagon really, really fast. It's because ultimately the AI that you're building now, you need to be looking at it in the same lens that you look through any piece of data for privacy. Where did we obtain that piece of data? How is that data being processed, and how are we looking after that data? That all translates over. And I don't think people are thinking about it enough. Engineers, gotta love them, will build something super, super cool, a black box piece of AI. They don't necessarily understand how it works. They don't necessarily understand the training set that it was given and how it's making that decision. But they can do basic things like test input and test output. But they need to be documenting that process. This piece of AI does this because it's trained on this, and we know that it works because X, Y, Z.
So going to the privacy now, how critical is the role of privacy in the content moderation process, and how does it overlap with AI?
It doesn't overlap, it clashes.
Yes, we want to hear that.
We heard from our keynote as well that they are competing equities. On one hand, you're being told, protect people's privacy, don't go jumping into people's private data, be transparent about what you're processing and the reasons that you're processing it. On the other hand, we're being told to protect people. If we told child groomers online how we detected what they were doing, and we told them the data that we were processing in order to catch them, they would change what they were doing. They already change what they're doing. They already test the systems. They already know. So how do we strike that balance between protecting people's safety and protecting people's privacy? It almost can't be done. E-privacy directive is a good demonstration of that. The derogation was a great help, but the derogation in itself is fundamentally flawed in a number of ways. It was almost a test bed for DSA. In that you
Can you explain the e-privacy directive?
So the biggest problem in trust and safety in Europe right now is the e-privacy directive means that you can't scan private messages. So you have TikTok, Snap, Facebook that have minors on there and adults. They can contact children, and that communication between that adult and that child can't be monitored in Europe. Children aren't groomed in open chat rooms. They're groomed in one-to-one messages. You go onto Facebook, you find a child, click message, and there's nothing that can be done. The problem that regulators and lawmakers like to point to is that we need to protect people's communication. People have a right to privacy. Yes, they absolutely do. But people, especially children, have the right to be safe online. And there are privacy-safe ways of monitoring private messages. But lawmakers are so skeptical of tech companies, they're so skeptical of AI, that distrust actually blocks progress on the issue.
What strategies can be employed to ensure content moderation systems are compliant with GDPR?
Well, I think that there's a few. We can't. Maybe Adrien will have also something to say about that. But and Adrien actually mentioned quite a few things. But when adopting such a solution, you will need to consider a few things. You will need to conduct a data protection impact assessment, probably. And if you already have a process in place and a data protection impact assessment template, you would be like looking at urgently updating the template and the analysis that you are conducting when conducting a data protection impact assessment about such a solution. There is no clear indication as to what risks you should be looking at. So if you would like to have some help with that, there are a few regulators who adopted some guidelines, notably the ICO adopted a AI audit framework that can be used to identify risks that are relevant to AI technology. And you basically need to rework these data protection impact assessments templates to ensure that when conducting your analysis, these are tailored to specifically AI technology and more particularly for content moderation. I think that when adopting such a solution, there will be also quite an important question, which will be defining the role of the parties between yourself and the provider. Will you be a controller? Will there be a processor? Will there be a joint controllership type of relationship? These will be important issues to consider because it will have an impact on the contractual arrangement that you will be adopting in order to contract with these parties. And that there will be more. There will need to be training. You will need to consider right of access. All of the GDPR principles will be totally applicable to the way you will be processing the data with the use of such a technology. So, yeah, Adrien, do you want to add something?
Just jumping back to what you said about striking the balance, I think this is a really complex question, of course. And since there are a lot of stakeholders in this room today about in the trust and safety community, I think also one of the points that should be approached or like that we need to think about is like what is the level of openness that we want to have in the tools that we provide. So, for instance, if you want to make sure that the content moderation is auditable, should it be open or not? Because if you want to strike the balance, on the one hand, you can maybe, by opening it up, ease any kind of adversarial attacks on those elements that are like now publicly available. But on the other side, if you don't make any of those processes, tools, and elements open, then how can you make sure the models or the AI system are doing the moderation? So I think there's a huge conversation to have around openness and open source in AI safety and content moderation.
Yes, so this is an argument that is often used by big tech companies to keep their process hidden or shallow.
So if we take a concrete example, so we are mentioning how you can use AI to do content moderation, but you can also think about the other way. So how do current generative AI providers are doing their trust and safety? So is ChatGPT modifying the prompt behind the surface? How do they proactively use filters or not? And that kind of conversation is really important because when you have a fully integrated model as a ChatGPT, it is both an AI model plus an AI system, meaning that an AI model is actually just GPT-4 plus the user interface on top of it makes it an AI system. And you calling to like through the API, you are just interacting with the AI system, but you have no clue what's going behind that surface. So this is a really important topic. It is internationally, of course, because you have the executive order in the US, you have the EU AI Act that is like about to be applicable, come into force around this summer. And also you have international standards and conversation in the G7 Hiroshima process. They all mention red teaming. Red teaming is like the new word. Like in the executive order, you have 8 mentions of red teaming. Among the 11 principles of the G7 Hiroshima process, principle number 3 is red teaming. And I think maybe policymakers are too focused on red teaming. This is a cool term here in a cybersecurity event since it exists for 40 years. But I think we are overstating a bit the role of red teaming. Red teaming is not going to solve every problem we have in AI safety and content moderation.
So can you just explain? I know we are in a cybersecurity conference, so we shouldn't explain, but just briefly in one word.
To put it simply, it's an adversarial attack. You are trying to probing your AI system, attacking it in many ways, but maybe you can make some drill exercise on known techniques and attacks, but you don't know what you don't know. So red teaming is not it's just one part of a bigger technical and organizational governance process of AI safety and content moderation. So I think, as a lawyer, I'm concerned about the legal qualification when I see this term appearing in all those texts without any precise definition and any assessment of what's the impact of red teaming among various larger elements. I think we also need to have the conversation around auditability of moderation elements and processes. So not only red teaming.
So auditability is an alternative to red teaming? Or?
I'm not saying it's a red teaming. I'm saying we have to see the big picture and not only throw keywords and put it in text and hope that the magic will happen.
Thank you. And so going a little bit deeper about the development of accurate, efficient, cost-effective, unbiased AI system. How do we do that? What would be your recommendation? I know, Adrien, you're working also on the metaverse. It's a good example where actually it's something new. We need to moderate that. How do we think about that? Because we can't look at every single behavior, so AI becomes mandatory. How do we start if we want to develop a AI-based moderation system? It's a hard question.
Now everyone looks at the techie. So developing an AI-based moderation system, first of all, understand the limitations of AI. That's the number one thing, because AI is not a be-all and end-all that's going to solve every single content moderation problem that you have right now. Maybe in 3 to 5 years, it will. But one of the big problems with AI is it lacks context. So I can call my best friend a effing idiot online, and it's not an insult. But if I did it to a stranger, it is. So there's a lot of things that AI can't do, but there are a lot of things that AI can do. So the way that we generally talk about it is that use AI for your high confidence tasks, things that you know, the everyday stuff. This is violating, this is violating. If you've got stuff in image banks, even better. If you're hash matching, Siggy isn't here, but vid identifier, etc. But use your humans for those edge cases, stuff that flags and that is unsure, but also then reuse those humans to retrain that model. If an AI flags something for a particular violation and it's not that model needs to understand that learning. That learning needs to go back into the system. So almost turn your humans into AI trainers, not just content moderators. And the more you do that, the better the AI will get overall.
That said, I think that one of the challenges for global organizations is that some content that might be illegal or unacceptable in one country or one region. If I take the example of the UK and France, there are so many jokes in the UK that would not be acceptable in France, and the other way around. And so I think that there's also that kind of
Do you have examples?
lawyers don't speak English, for instance. In France, not funny. Yeah, so that's also something that, of course, will need to be, I think, taken into account.
Yeah, the example I normally use is flag burning, where it's illegal to burn your own flag in approximately half of EU member states, but it's not illegal to burn somebody else's. So then how do you then take action on that piece of content?
Exactly, yeah.
I'm not suggesting I'll burn the French flag, by the way.
This is something that we often hear, is that AI becomes so accurate that it will be able to handle cultural differences. So you will have different policies per country depending on their sensitivity, because it's one of the big problems today in content moderation. Your everyday operations, people complain on reports, oh, but that's socially acceptable, while it's against the community guidelines. So there is a big differences between what is written in your community guidelines, which are often global, and the perceptions of people. Do you have a few words related to that, the differences between expectations and policies, and how do you craft them so that AI is actually aligned with very detailed, cultural dependent, contextual dependent guidelines?
So that's really expansive. I'm just going to sort of zero in on this. If it's illegal in one member state but not another, the one piece of advice that we always give to clients is it's how you structure your policies on how you take action on that piece of content. So you can say in your policy, if it's illegal in one member state, we will take it down in all, because then it evens out your content moderation. It makes it a bit easier. But more than any of that is you never really know where a user is actually based. Like, we can read IP address, we can read header information, we can read device info. But if I'm using a VPN or if I'm traveling for work, then all of that stuff goes out the window. So it actually adds another layer of assurance anyway. I'll pass it off to the lawyers to talk more about policies.
No, I mean, I just want to. I think it's always a challenge when working with clients, global clients, because harmonizing with somehow the stricter approach, as you just described, I know that also clients don't really like that. So it's always about trying to find a balance between finding the safest approach in order to not overcomplicate compliance versus providing a certain level of granularity in the advice or in the support or in the solution, so as to ensure that the product that our client offers to their users remains appealing for their final users.
And when you're a global organization, compliance is going to be tricky, because what we're describing today are also all the intersections in between DSA, AI Act, GDPR. If you take the example of VLOPs, very large online platforms in the Digital Services Act, and then there are not a lot of analogy already made, but like you can certainly use the same systematic risk threshold approach than the one you have for general purpose AI model and model and system in the AI Act. So I guess those thresholds of systematic risk that lies in the intersection of all those pieces of legislation are going to be really important and interesting to dig further in the coming years.
Yes. Is there any questions before I move on to maybe the generative AI moderation? Okay, prepare your questions. So we can look a little bit further in the future, or what we are seeing actually today is that there is a lot of generative AI company. Of course, we mentioned ChatGPT, but there are hundreds of new companies that enables you to create content at scale. And that creates a big issue. When we speak about content moderation, often we think about the user's perspective at the consumption of the content. But what happens? What are the regulations that are applied directly at the production of the content? So what regulation can we expect in the next few years on generative AI company?
How many hours do we have? It's going to be a long one. Actually, I'm going to just give like two pragmatic takeaways. I think one of the first misconception we have today is not distinguishing in between AI models and AI system again. I think this is really, really important. There are people that do provide a model, and there are people that sometimes also integrate that fully vertically within a system, but sometimes not, because it's another business that build an application on top of that. And this distinction is really important, because then when you have a legal qualification and a legal regime that correspond to that, you have various requirements that can differ. So for instance, when you think about AI safety, there is also this misconception that the provider of the general purpose AI model should be fully liable for the safety of this model. But I think that's a misconception, because actually you cannot ask for the GPIM, the general purpose AI model provider, to fully know beforehand how the AI model is going to be deployed within a system. So it's also on the downstream provider shoulders the burden to know how, in the context, how the model is going to be used, what kind of filter you can build on top of it. So you cannot, the takeaway is you cannot delegate the AI safety only to the models layer. You have to also think on the system layer. A concrete example is like you cannot ask for a provider of an AI model to make it impossible to generate a phishing email, because if you do that, they will not simply make any recommendation to generate email. So you talked about content production, but it's actually a generation of content through prompts. And so the prompting also plays a role. So it's not only the provider of the model, it's also the one that are building application on top, and all the people that are interacting with them and prompting them.
Yes. Any question from the public?
My question about generative AI is, you mainly can enter any informations to the prompt to make letters, email, or whatever. As we, for ChatGPT, for example, you can't ask him, please make me the recipe to make explosives. I think maybe the prompt, as you said, can be filtered to just avoid entering any information that may be relevant to a company or anything. It's more prompt filtering that the data inserted. Because we fear that the data given to this AI can be used for anything, which need to be processed and secured, but maybe just by filtering the prompt, let's say, I won't reply because...
It already exists, actually. Yeah. There are many techniques. I think my answer won't be exhaustive, but you have, for instance, align weights. So when you have a base model, you train it, and the model produces weights. Then you can realign, fine-tune those weights on some kind of specific database, preference database that repurpose the way the weights are being trained so that it takes into consideration or not the way you're prompting it. This is one way. You can have programmable guardrails, that is handwritten instructions to make sure that the model behave in a certain way. You can have system prompt also. So you can build a library of prompt, and so when a third-party user is prompting your AI model or system, then also at the system layer you can have an automatic, invisible for you as an end user, prompt that complements your own prompt, so that the model takes into consideration certain instructions or not. So all of those various techniques that can be programmed or can be implicit or explicit are already being investigated. The question being also, when we talked about transparency, openness, and auditability, which part of those various tech stack would you make open or not? Because you want to make that balance in between making it transparent so that it can be accountable and understandable, but at the same time you don't want to increase the attack surface of your AI system.
Thanks a lot. Is there any?
I had a question about Elon Musk and its open source AI. So what's your opinion about that?
So, open source AI. Open source AI, I think, is a very interesting topic. I think it might be a bit of a controversial topic. I think it's a very open source AI this goes back to pretty much everything that we've been speaking about, that you don't necessarily know the data set that it's been trained on. You probably won't know how it's making a decision. I'm not a huge fan of open source AI in general terms, but there are very specific cases where it can be useful. Elon Musk, that doesn't really go either way with me. It could come from anybody. So I know that Facebook have published their own tools for content moderation. They've published backbones for AI. We use ChatGPT to create content moderation tools. There are some inherent flaws in that, but it goes back to, you just have to be so on top of the governance. You have to be so on top of the monitoring. You have to be constantly testing and probing that system if you're going to put it out into production in your own use cases, because you will ultimately become liable for it.
Any opinion on open sourcing AI?
Yeah, of course. I think open source in traditional software development is really different from openness in AI. In traditional software, it was just about software code source. Now we are talking about various layers of technology, data, model, parameters. You actually have to represent an entire stack to know what is being opened or not. This is the first takeaway. And then the second one is like, are we really talking about like what kind of license is attached to it? I will make a difference in between open source license and available license, source available software license, which is not the same. And so it's not the same, to put a concrete example without mentioning any stakeholders, but it's different to have a license that has been recognized by the open source initiative, whereas if you have a customized one that does not enable your end users to further modify the code source or do stuff like that, it's not the same level of openness. So I will also make that distinction. And it gets back to know if you are on a customized license or on an MIT license or whatever license you can check.
Thank you. Any final question?
Yeah, I have a question, and actually I don't know how to ask it, but when the Dutch were in their heydays of international trade, they invented the limited liability company as a legal entity to do business. Do you see something comparable coming up for AI systems, where there's different stakeholders in how that system was created and what their liability will be, say, if a self-driving car hits somebody? And this is a question for the English-speaking lawyers.
So what is the equivalent of self-driving car hitting someone in content moderation?
Well, there can be a lot of things. If a system makes its own decisions, a wrong decision can have very big repercussions. We're specifically active in detecting child abuse material, or in reports coming from Facebook, and there have been cases where there were search warrants executed, and then Facebook withdraw the report after the fact. And that can be very disturbing. So that there can be a lot of things that can be the consequence of a wrong decision of an AI system, and who is to blame then? You already talked a little bit about it, but maybe there's a need for a new legal entity that can handle that.
So my area is more privacy, and I have great colleagues that deal with liability issues. But it seems that the answer to your question will be a mix of regulation, what the regulation says, and contractual arrangement, looking at who's contractually responsible for any harm caused by a solution. That would be where I would be going. But I'd be happy to take the question offline if no one else can answer it. Yeah, but it's a question that is currently open to debate in any event, and there is no, to my knowledge, clear-cut answer to that.
Okay, thanks a lot, everyone. So last word. So what are you looking forward in the next 12 months before the next Trust and Safety Forum? Aha, you were not prepared.
A good holiday, not in the UK. Maybe. I think for me, it's what's very interesting and what I see in the work that I do on a daily basis is the to see this somehow these questions from clients about governance, about how to structure their teams, about how to structure their policies, their procedures, how to approach this. It is AI is already present and it's already used by organizations, but there is really a lack of awareness, and I feel a little bit of this excitement that I felt in 2016 at the beginning of the GDPR. A couple of years ago, we were all thinking, oh, the GDPR is done. Privacy lawyers were feeling a bit in the blues because we thought that business would not be present anymore, or not as much as we used to have. And it's very exciting to see these new regulations. There's also the Data Act that we didn't talk about today. And so there is more excitement to come for us as professional services providers, but also for you as organizations, and also for regulators and policymakers.
I'm looking at building with and within the community. I think it's a really exciting times to work at the intersection of tech, product, and policy. And I think maybe we reached that threshold of awareness that we need to do stuff and not only wait for a regulation to be enforced. I think also it's a super important moment to make that trust and safety community emerge even more that it has been doing like for the couple of years. And I think it's going to be, it has to gain a lot more of visibility, even though a lot of good initiatives have been undertaken. And I'm really looking forward to it.
So AI is not replacing lawyers yet.
I'm really looking forward to a really ironic situation that's going to occur where people are already and are going to be building AI to handle all the regulations responsibilities that they have. That is going to be genius, because there is going to be a regulation for the regulation thing that's regulating the thing. And at that point, I think that the European Commission's heads just might explode. And that'd be fantastic to watch.
Exactly. On this last word, thank you, Kieran. Let's thank the panelists for this great discussions.